Hey everyone, remember that feeling of watching something repulsive but also hilarious at the same time?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's the feeling we're diving into today with
Yeah.
the Ren and Stimpy show.
It's a weird one.
This show, I mean, it's infamous for its unique brand of humor, wild animation. It really left a lasting impact, I think, on the animation world. So get
Yeah.
ready to explore the surprising origins, the artistic genius, and yes, even the controversy that made this show a cult classic.
What's interesting to me is how Ren and Stimpy was both a love letter and also like a giant slimy middle finger to like classic animation.
Right.
You'd have these moments of like pure visual artistry and then bam, a close up of Ren picking his nose that'd make you want to like shield your eyes.
Okay, so before we get to the nose picking, let's rewind. Where did these characters even come from?
Oh.
I mean, Ren, this scrawny chihuahua with a god complex, and Stimpy, a cat who's basically a sentient beanbag chair.
Yeah.
They're so distinctly
Lena?
them.
You'd think they were just like spawned from some fever dream, right?
Right.
But they're really rooted in some pretty unexpected places. John Kricfalusi, the show's creator, he actually based Ren's design on a 1946 photograph of a chihuahua wearing a sweater.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
That's wild. It's like finding out the Mona Lisa was inspired by a doodle on a napkin.
Exactly. And Stimpy, with that vacant grin and that wobbly physique, was actually inspired by a Tweety Bird cartoon. Kricfalusi took these classic cartoon tropes, right, and twisted them into something totally new, something, well, Stimpy-esque.
So we've got a vintage chihuahua and like a warped Tweety bird. That's the foundation of this whole thing. But here's the kicker. They weren't even meant to be the main attraction at first.
You're absolutely right. Kricfalusi's initial vision for the show was as a variety show. Think of it like a cartoon kaleidoscope with a bunch of different segments. Ren and Stimpy were actually just pets to one if the kids on this show called Your Gang.
Your gang. It's kind of hard to imagine Ren and Stimpy playing second fiddle to anyone, let alone a bunch of kids. It makes you wonder what that show would have even looked like.
It's a fascinating thought experiment, isn't it?
Yeah.
But even more surprising is that Nickelodeon almost passed on the entire concept, even with Ren and Stimpy relegated to the sidelines.
Really?
Yeah.
They almost said no to the show that gave us happy, joy, joy.
This is a song about being happy. That's right. It's the happy, happy, joy, joy song. Happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy, joy, joy. Happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy, joy, joy. Happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy, joy, joy. Happy, happy, joy, joy, joy.
It's true. Nickelodeon wasn't entirely sold on the show's lack of overt educational content. They were hesitant to embrace a show that just seemed to revel in its absurdity.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think that such a groundbreaking show almost never saw the light of day.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine a world without Ren and Stimpy? It's like a world without...
Well, I
Light
can't even
rays.
think of an analogy weird enough.
And it's tough.
Yeah.
And that's precisely why Ren and Stimpy made such an impact. It took risks, embraced the grotesque, and ultimately forced animation to loosen its tie and embrace the weird.
Yeah.
You know?
Speaking of weird, let's talk about the animation itself. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill Saturday morning cartoon. The style was so distinct, so in your face.
It was a deliberate homage to like the golden age of animation.
Particularly the works of Bob Clampett. You see his influence in those exaggerated expressions, like when Ren gets angry and his jaw practically detaches from his skull.
Right.
Yeah.
Or those close-ups so intense you feel like you're right there in Ren's nostrils when he sneezes.
Exactly. Clampett was known for pushing the boundaries of physical comedy, and Ren and Stimpy took that to a whole other level. But it wasn't just the characters. Even the backgrounds had this surreal, almost unsettling quality to them.
They were like staring into a psychedelic fever dream.
Yeah.
Sometimes the backgrounds are just like random swirls of color.
Right. It created this sense of unease, like the world of Ren and Stimpy operated on its own bizarre logic.
Right.
And then there was the music.
Ah, yes. The music. Even if you've never seen an episode of Ren and Stimpy, chances are you've heard Happy, Happy, Joy, Joy.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
That song became an instant classic, a bizarre earworm that perfectly captured the show's manic energy. But the musical influences went far beyond that one song. They used everything from rockabilly to jazz to even classical music,
Wow.
creating a soundscape as unpredictable and eclectic as the animation itself.
It's like they took all these disparate elements, the vintage cartoon influences, the grotesque close-ups, the bizarre music, and threw them into a blender with like a gallon of slime. And somehow it worked. It created this wonderfully weird, undeniably hilarious and occasionally repulsive masterpiece. But let's be real, this show wasn't just beloved for its animation and music. It courted controversy like a moth to a bug zapper.
And that's putting it mildly. The behind-the-scenes battles between the creators and Nickelodeon's standards and practices, oh, they were legendary. It was this constant push and pull, with Crick Falusi and his team trying to see just how far they could bend, or maybe even break, the rules of what was considered acceptable for children's television.
It's like they were playing a high-stakes game of how much weirdness can we get away with?
And Nickelodeon was always right there with the buzzer, ready to shut down anything deemed too edgy, too gross, or too subversive. Religious imagery, gone. Characters smoking, edited out. Even the violence, a hallmark of classic cartoons, wasn't safe from the censors. And the thing is, they tried to tone down the violence, but Ren and Stimpy just wasn't Ren and Stimpy without, like, a healthy dose of cartoonish mayhem.
And that brings us to the infamous Man's Best Friend episode. The one that was ultimately deemed too extreme for even MTV to air.
A real dog's gotta know how to protect its master. Now, in order to protect, you must learn to attack. Now, come on, boys. Attack! Let's go, Rex. Attack me. But you are my kind and beloved master. I can't. But I can.
I'm thinking about that for a second. MTV, the network known for pushing boundaries, thought this episode was too much.
It really speaks to the audacity of the show's creators. This wasn't just about being edgy for the sake of it, you know? They were genuinely challenging the conventions of animation and, more broadly, what was considered acceptable content for a mass audience.
Right.
You know?
What's fascinating to me is the seemingly arbitrary line drawn between what was censored and what made it to air. For example, they had no problem showing Ren strangling Stimpy with his own intestines in the opening credits.
Right.
But a glimpse of a cigarette, unthinkable.
It highlights this fascinating tension that kind of ran through the entire series. This clash between unbridled creative expression and the realities of network television. You had these incredibly talented artists pushing the boundaries of what animation could be, but they were constantly bumping up against the limitations imposed by a network trying to appeal to a wide audience.
Right. And yet, despite those limitations, or maybe because of them, Ren and Stimpy left an indelible mark on the animation world.
Absolutely. It's no exaggeration to say that Ren and Stimpy changed the game. It proved that there was an audience hungry for animation that wasn't afraid to be weird, gross, and unapologetically itself.
Mike Judge, the creator of Beavis and Butthead, has even said that Ren and Stimpy's success on MTV helped pave the way for his own show.
Exactly. Ren and Stimpy cracked open the door for a new wave of adult animation, showing that cartoons could be more than just lighthearted entertainment for kids. They could be subversive, thought-provoking, and even a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, it's like they ushered in a whole new golden age of animation, where creators felt empowered to take risks and explore more mature themes, all while still embracing the inherent absurdity of cartoons.
And you can see that influence everywhere. From shows like Spongebob SquarePants with its own brand of surreal humor to more adult-oriented cartoons like Rick and Morty and Bojack Horseman, which delve into complex themes and existential anxieties.
It's amazing to think that a show featuring a flatulent chihuahua and his dim-witted feline companion could have such a profound impact on the world of animation. But then again, that's the magic of Ren and Stimpy. It embraced the weird, the gross, and the unconventional, and in doing so, it changed the way we think about animation forever.
And speaking of forever, you know, Ren and Stimpy is dipping its toes back into the animation waters, so to speak.
Yeah.
You might have heard about the reboot that was announced for Comedy Central.
Yeah, the news certainly made a splash, though I have to admit I'm a little hesitant about this whole reboot thing.
Yeah.
It's like trying to recapture lightning in a bottle, you know?
I think that's a valid concern.
Yeah.
The animation landscape has changed so much since Ren and Stimpy first graced our screens.
Right.
Back then, it was this shocking subversive force. It pushed boundaries and made people uncomfortable, and that was part of its charm.
Exactly. Part of me wonders if that kind of humor would even land the same way today, you know?
Yeah.
Times have changed, sensibilities have shifted, and what was considered outrageous in the 90s might seem tame or even problematic by today's standards.
Yeah. It begs the question,
Right.
Can you separate Ren and Stimpy from its original context? Can you revive that same spirit of unrestrained creativity and audacious humor in today's cultural climate?
Right.
Or is it better to leave well enough alone and let the original stand as a testament to a different era in animation?
It's a tough one. On the one hand, I'd love to see what kind of insane antics Ren and Stimpy would get up to with today's animation technology. But on the other hand, there's something to be said for leaving classics untouched, right? Letting them exist in that perfect bubble of nostalgia.
It's a dilemma, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And to make things even more interesting, the release of the reboot has been a bit of a roller coaster ride, you know? It's been delayed indefinitely in Latin America, but it's already out in France. But regardless of what the future holds for Ren and Stimpy, there's no denying the impact of the original show. It was a product of its time, yes, but it also helped shape the future of animation.
Right.
It paved the way for a generation of creators to embrace the weird, the wonderful, and the downright wacky.
Ren and Stimpy taught us that animation could be more than just Saturday morning cartoons.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this thought. Does the legacy of the Ren and Stimpy show need a reboot to stay relevant? Or is its place in animation history secure, frozen in time like a perfectly preserved fart joke?
Food for thought. I'd love to hear your take on it. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep it weird.